Hello and welcome to another Brawl video. Today we're checking out this black, red and green or Junt colored land sacrifice deck built around Hearthhull, the Worldseed. This 4-mana legendary spacecraft first needs to be stationed in order to do something. Add 2 or more counters by simply tapping our creatures and adding counters equal to their power. We can now pay 1 mana, tap Hearthhull, sacrifice a land to draw 2 cards, and then we also get to play an additional land this turn to make up for the land we just sacrificed. And then at 8 or more counters, Hearthhull turns into a 6/7 creature with flying, vigilance and haste, so we can attack and then maybe still activate it in our second main phase. And now, whenever we sacrifice a land, each opponent loses 2 life. So sacrificing a land to its first ability can cause the opponent to lose 2. We also have a ton of fetch lands throughout that can easily be sacrificed to enable Hearthhull's ability. And we also have a few effects that can just sacrifice all our lands at will, so those can also potentially end the game with a fully stationed commander. So then taking a look at our deck breakdown, I've split it up into a few different categories, starting with kind of the classic ramp cards, so mana creatures that can tap for mana, some sorceries that can maybe find an extra land and put them in play. Those can all help set up our early turns so we can get to the juicy part, which often involves some landfall creatures, and we've got a few in the deck, not as many as we could be running since we're mostly relying on our commander as a win condition, so I'm not playing any of the landfall cards that give us additional +1 counters or any of the landfall cards that can maybe make lots of tokens. Cards like Scoot Swarm of course would be a fine inclusion, but I'm trying to mostly win with my commander if possible, so we mostly have landfall cards that support that game plan by generating additional mana, maybe drawing some cards, so we can try and assemble the 2 combo pieces. And the main combo pieces we want to try and assemble is, on the one hand, a way to play additional lands each turn, and then on the other hand, a way to replay lands out of the graveyard. And those are the next 2 categories, because if we have both in play, now with a fetch land, a land that can sacrifice itself to find another land in our library, we can now keep getting that same fetch land back out of the graveyard over and over, triggering our Hearthhull in the process if we've got it fully stationed, making the opponent lose life. And at the same time, we're also generating lots of landfall triggers, and we're also ramping by putting additional lands in play, so that's how all the synergies really come to fruition. And then, as I mentioned, we've got a few effects that let us sacrifice all the lands we have in play, so that can also massively trigger our commander and close out the game. And then our miscellaneous section has a few removal effects, as well as a couple ways to reward us for sacrificing our permanents, which can also trigger off sacrificing our fetch lands. And we have a few ways to tutor up specific lands, because as you may have noticed, Brawl also gets access to Strip Mine, which is of course incredibly powerful, especially with the setup we have in this deck, where we can often replay lands out of the graveyard and play additional lands, so we can start sacrificing Strip Mine over and over, destroying all of the opponent's lands, and that's also pretty much a win condition. And then, of course, we've got plenty of fetch lands, as we alluded to synergize with the rest of the deck. So that's our game plan in a nutshell. Now for the deep dive, starting with our mana acceleration, can maybe rely on Chrome Mox to give us an explosive start. Then we've got our typical mana creatures, Birds of Paradise, Delighted Halfling, Elvish Mystic, Lenor Elves. Utopia Sprawl has plenty of forests to enchant, and Deathrite Shaman's also pretty good since we have so many cards ending up in the graveyard that we can often use land in graveyard to make mana with Deathrite. Can maybe exile opposing fetch lands or strip mines as well, so that can also come in handy. Then we've got Explore to play an extra land draw card. There's Farseek, also a relatively recent addition, can get our various dual lands or tri-lands. There's also Rampant Growth, kind of a classic. Could also play Into the North if you want to play some snow-covered basics. We've got Arcane Signet, as it can immediately tap for a colored mana. And then Cultivate, also a nice 2-for-1. Harrow can sack a land to get 2 untapped lands, so also very good alongside some of our landfall cards. And Primeval Titan, another way to maybe tutor up our Strip Mine as well if we get to 6 mana. And then our landfall cards include the Iridescent Vine Lasher, can also play it with Offspring to make an extra 1/1 version, and then deals 1 damage to the opponent whenever we play a land, so that also complements our commander nicely of just burning them out by playing and sacrificing lands over and over. There's Lotus Cobra to generate an extra mana with landfall, very good with our fetch lands as well. And then in a similar vein, we also have Nissa, which can also eventually find some elves or elementals, plenty of those throughout. And the Tireless Provisioner can make treasure tokens, so that's also a form of mana. And then there's Iridia, which can discard and draw with landfall, can also help set up our various combos and fill the graveyard. We've got Tireless Tracker, making clue tokens if we need additional card advantage. Traveling Chocobo just doubles all our landfall triggers, can also play lands off the top. And Ancient Green Warden can also double our landfall effects while also replaying lands out of the graveyard, so could also put it in this other category. And Courser of Krufix in the meantime gains life while playing lands off the top. Tanuk rewards us by dealing damage to the opponent, while also maybe drawing an extra card if we've triggered a landfall twice. And then we've got our extra land drop effects, starting with the Druid class, which we first need to level up, but in the meantime it still gains life with a landfall as well. We've got Azusa, which is the most powerful one, as it can play up to 2 extra lands each turn. Dryad fixes our colors, lets us play 1 extra land. Loot is 1 extra land, but can also activate for 6 mana to maybe find a creature. There's a Swordtooth as a 5/5, so it's also pretty good at stationing our commander, even if we don't have the City's Blessing yet. Oracle of Moldaya can also play lands off the top and gives us an extra land drop. The Explorer can both play an extra land and play lands out of the graveyard, so also does double duty, and also mills us in the meantime, so that can also increase the likelihood of milling some more fetch lands or other powerful lands like Strip Mine. And then the Gidrock monster lets us play an extra land. We do have to sack a land each turn, but by sacking a land we also get to draw cards, so that's also a very powerful effect. And then Escape to the Wilds is just a very big version of Explorer, exiling the top 5 cards, and we also get to play an extra land this turn, so the more mana we have available, the more powerful this gets. And then ways to replay lands out of the graveyard include the Aftermath Analyst, will mill 3 when it enters, can sack it for 4 mana to return all lands from our graveyard to the battlefield tapped, and in a similar fashion we've got Splendid Reclamation, just a 4 mana sorcery that does the same. Then to actually play lands out of the graveyard, we've got both a Ramunap Excavator as well as Crucible Worlds. In enchantment form, there's the Walk-in Closet, can also maybe unlock the Forgotten Cellar at some point to play other spells out of the graveyard. And then we also have the Conduit of Worlds, which is a slightly pricier Crucible, but we can also activate it to maybe play a non-land permanent out of the graveyard if we haven't cast any other spells. We've got the Explorer, as we mentioned. Soul of Windgrace, when it enters or attacks, can also return a land from our graveyard. Then the Genesis Shepherd, also a recent addition, lets us play lands from graveyard. Whenever we sacrifice a non-token permanent, we also get to put +1 counters on our creatures. Then the Green Warden we've already mentioned, as well as a Lumra, which when it enters can mill a bunch of cards and then return all lands from our graveyard to the battlefield. Scales with a number of lands we control, so it can also be a significant threat. And then we've got a World Soul's Rage, which can also deal a bunch of damage and return lands from our graveyard to the battlefield tapped. And then we can sacrifice our lands at will using the Sylvan Safekeeper, which can also protect one of our creatures, giving it Shroud until end of turn. We do not have access to Zurin Orb, which would be another good sacrifice outlet, but don't have that card on Arena. We do have Pitiless Carnage, can maybe even plot it for 3 mana, and then at a later point cast it for free from exile, sacrificing any number of permanents we control, drawing that many cards in the process. So this can also be quite good if we have a way to put all lands from our graveyard back into play, an effect like the Aftermath Analyst, or perhaps a Splendid Reclamation, especially if we manage to plot Carnage on a previous turn, since then it's just good card advantage while giving us a ton of landfall triggers, but it's also just a way to end the game if we've got our fully stationed Hearthhull on the battlefield. And then Escape Shift can sacrifice any number of lands. We get to tutor up that many lands and put them on the battlefield tapped. And the Famished Worldsire has a Devour Land 3, so when it enters we can sacrifice any number of lands. It gets 3 +1 counters for each land we've sacrificed, and then when it enters we get to look at the top X cards of our library, where X is its power. So basically, for every land we sacrifice, we get to look at the top 3 cards of our library and then put any number of lands we find from among them onto the battlefield tapped. So we'll often get more lands than we've originally sacrificed, and we also get to trigger landfall and other effects in the meantime, including potentially our commander. And then our miscellaneous section has a few removal spells. Fatal Push, pretty good at enabling Revolt with all our fetch lands, and then Binding can also eventually find an extra forest on Chapter 2. We've got the Elvish Reclaimer, which can also grow if we've got enough lands in graveyard, but the activated ability is the interesting part, as it lets us tutor up whatever land we want. Can maybe get a fetch land if we don't have one in circulation, or we can get the aforementioned Strip Mine. Same with Sylvan Scrying, just a 2 mana sorcery that doesn't ramp, but lets us tutor tutor up whatever land we want. Spelunking can be pretty good, since I've mentioned lands entering tapped a bunch of times. With Spelunking, lands now enter untapped, so especially good with those Scapeshift-like abilities that put a whole bunch of lands into play at once. And then there's Augur of Autumn, lets us play lands off the top and maybe creatures if we have Coven enabled. Titania gains life whenever we sacrifice one of our fetch lands, 2 life in fact, and then can also maybe combine it with Argoth to meld into Titania, which can also get lands back out of the graveyard when it transforms, so that's also quite synergistic. Then Mayhem Devil just deals 1 damage to any target whenever a player sacrifices a permanent, so it also affects the opponent's fetch lands, and of course can combine with our own fetch lands and other sacrifice effects to burn the opponent out. And then a Korvold is another payoff for sacrificing our permanents, so now whenever we sacrifice a land we get a +1 counter and we get to draw a card, so that's also incredibly powerful. And then our mana base does need access to plenty of basics, because if we want to recur a fetch land, even if it's, let's say, a blue-red fetch land which cannot get forest, we want to make sure we have enough mountains to fetch in that case. So we've got 4 mountains, 4 swamps, and then 8 forests. Boseiju can also be channeled to deal with artifacts and enchantments. We mentioned Argoth, which can meld with Titania. And then we've got 1 of each of the shock lands, which we can also get with most of our fetch lands, and the surveil land can also give us a bit of extra card selection, so 1 of each of those. The Proving Ground is a tri-land that we can also find with most of our fetch lands, and then Ancient Tomb, also pretty exciting, can tap for 2 colorless mana, so it can give us a nice mana boost, even if it is a little bit painful, but we've got a few life gain effects to make up for it. And then we've got a ton of these fetch lands that can be sacrificed at the cost of 1 life to get their corresponding basic types. Now, Arid Mesa seemingly is an off-color land, but because it doesn't tap for white mana, we can still play it in our Junt-colored commander deck, and besides getting basic mountains, we can also get our various dual lands like Stomping Ground or Blood Crypt, so we've got as many of these as we can get. The only one we're not playing is Flooded Strand, because we don't have any islands or plains in the deck. And then we also have the New Capenna fetch lands, which enter tapped, but they gain a life, and they're also good because they immediately sacrifice themselves, so if we get them with an effect like Scapeshift, for instance, that can also trigger landfall additional times, even though the lands initially enter tapped. And then, of course, Command Tower, Fabled Passage, another good fetch land that doesn't cost us any life, so that can be preferable in certain situations. And then, of course, we mentioned Strip Mine, another key piece in this deck. Urborg can turn all our lands into swamps, so now if we don't want to sacrifice our fetch lands, they can still at least tap for mana, and that pretty much sums it up. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the play, facing off against Jenova, so a +1 counter deck. We have ways to replay lands out of the graveyard, extra land drops. So we're just missing a fetch land. But yeah, I'll try this, even if we're missing some initial ramp. So if we ever find Strip Mine, we can potentially lock our opponent out of the game. But even just a fetch land would help us ramp. Safekeeper can keep everyone protected. Opponent ramps with Fanatic. Any reason to Chromox here? Not really. Just go for Dryad, play an extra land. And then can maybe get our commander online, which can also sacrifice lands, which we can then replay with a conduit. Kami will give them extra +1 counters, so that's pretty scary. Yeah, we don't have infinite time here. The opponent's eventually going to overpower us on the board. There's a fetch land we needed. So, what's the best course of action? Maybe it is already worth it to play Conduit. Do I need Chromox this turn? Yeah, I'm going to be a little bit short of playing Hearthhull as well. So I think this is just a Conduit plus fetch land kind of turn. With Dryad, we're not forced to sack the fetch land to tap it for mana, but in this case, we're happy to get an extra land. And can make it a surveil land. To maybe improve our draw step. Well, there's the Worldsire. Not gonna say no. Would be pretty fun to see that in action. So can draw it next turn and sacrifice a whole bunch of lands to it. It's 8 mana, 6. So yeah, we should be able to set that up. Ooh, our opponent's got an Ouroboros. It's named that because everyone says ooh when it's cast. They can make 3 mana with Kami, another one with Fanatic. Oh no, Tear Asunder blows up our Conduit, that's unfortunate. So now I might be a little short of casting the Worldsire. 6 can go up to 7 with Chromox, but that's not enough. So that's gonna have to wait. In the meantime, I can play Hearthhull, Station, but yeah, we're gonna get overpowered incredibly quickly by the Plant Worm. Yeah, that's rough. I guess we probably wanted a fully stationed Hearthhull before we bother sacrificing our lands anyway. If I play a Courser, I can maybe play a land off the top. If not, we can always shuffle to try again. That's good. So I can play my commander, and then, yeah, next turn if we draw Deathrite, I can pitch it to Chromox to cast the Worldsire. So that would be fine. And we'll start stationing. I probably should leave a chump blocker back, since we might be in that position already next turn. But then I can still fully station if needed. Because Safekeeper and Worldsire are a bit redundant. But Worldsire is definitely the more exciting one. Alright, pass a turn. Let's see if we're dead. Opponent with a Snakeskin Veil on Ouroboros, so they get even more counters. Up to 5, this taps for 4. Yeah, this is gonna hurt. Opponent runs out Jenova. I'm just hoping we get to cast the Worldsire. I don't care if I win or lose. So first counter on Ouroboros, it's 2 counters thanks to the Kami, and then everyone gets 7 counters. So I can chump Ouroboros, take 22. Alright, so looks like I get to untap here. Can play a land off the top first. Station. Station. Cast Worldsire. And I guess I can fetch first to get an extra Hearthhull trigger. Alright, let's go for it. Sack all my lanes. Bunch of triggers. And put a ton of lanes in play. So that gains me more life. And we can still attack for 6, plus second main I could still Chromox, pitch a Deathrite. And then, yeah, that could also activate Hearthhull. But we even found some new Capenna fetch lands which immediately sacrifice themselves. So our opponent actually just dies before we need to attack. Well, that was a pretty awesome game. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw, facing Gideon of the Trials, so a wide control deck. My hand's not bad, we've got an Ancient Tomb. Sylvan Scrying could also get a Strip Mine, or just a fetch land. Maybe missing ways to replay lands from Graveyard, or play additional lands out, although eventually I guess Druid class we can level up. So I'll try it. Can start by fetching. Forest is probably fine. Need double green to eventually cast Scapeshift. Opponent ramps with a Mindstone. Alright, could go for a Druid class. Since I don't know exactly what we want to get with Sylvan Scrying, I guess we do have a fetch land in circulation now. So Strip Mine seems like the better candidate. but I don't see myself necessarily strip mining next turn, since I want to be able to play Binding the Old Gods potentially. So I can play the Druid class. Can gain us some life back while Gideon beats us down.
Prepare to defend save yourself and give up now.
Ooh, Gitrog monster could be exciting. So, yeah. Ancient Tomb into Binding looks okay. Can blow up the Mind Stone and ignore Gideon for now. And then next turn I could play Gitrog monster. Although it could be better if I can immediately play fetch land to start drawing. Opponent does have a bunch of mana up. Can get a Survey land. Alright, so if I go for Gitrog monster, I get to play an extra land out. It probably gets removed instantly. So maybe instead we just level up the Druid class, and then I can explore, hit a few extra land drops, and take it from there. I can also run out my commander, which is less likely to get taken out instantly. So, a couple interesting options. Kind of liking the level up Druid class play. Could have maybe played land first in case they instantly destroy my enchantment at instant speed. Can explore. And now with Oracle we could play a ton of lands off the top. Opponent did have a Wandering Emperor end of turn, so that adds on to the pressure.
Let your blade do the talking.
But yeah, Sylvan Scrying might want to just get a fetch land here.
We've got the edge in this.
Stand down.
Opponent's got a Kithian as well. So this may be more aggressive than I had imagined. Could have also attacked with Mutavaults, or opponent wanted to keep 4 mana up. Alright. So Sylvan Scrying get a fetch land, might be the starting point. Can also use Mayhem Devil to take out Kithian. And I'll just get a painless one like Fabled Passage. Could still pivot, go Gitrog monster, and then I have a land to sack to immediately draw. Mayhem Devil does a bit of damage control. I guess I can make Kithian indestructible, maybe why they didn't attack with the Mutavaults. Alright, so I could get behind Gitrog monster then. Sack Fabled Passage. Immediately get to draw. Find another fetch land. Sacrifice, see what we draw of Gitrog monster. Azusa. So then I may as well surveil. And then a Vine Lasher isn't bad, but I really want to find a way to replay lands from graveyard easily, which we currently don't have yet. So our opponent did nothing end of turn. At 16, I'm hoping we're still safe for now.
I've got you.
And Gideon pluses on the monster, so it prevents all damage. And their opponent attacks. So, possible they have something like an Iganjo to channel to finish off the Gitrog monster. Might still be worth it to soak up some damage. So, opponent just wanted to transform Kithian. And now Gideon can do some stuff too.
Justice cannot be killed.
So it's forcing the Gideon monster to attack, which sets up the Wandering Emperor to maybe minus and exile it next turn. But we can get some value from it first. Cleric can tutor up whatever enchantment they want. And what we could also do is just tap the Gideon monster to station Hearthhull to at least get some benefit from it. I'll keep Ancient Tomb for now. Find another fetch land. Alright, so where do I want to start? Probably with a Mayhem Devil, so we can start mowing down some of the opponent's things. I'm probably going to end up tapping Ancient Tomb anyway. Yeah, what if I play Mayhem Devil, fully station Hearthhull? Then we can also make them lose life as we sack our fetch lands, but I don't necessarily know how many fetch lands we'll have. I doubt we can win the game with Escape Shift here, which would be interesting otherwise. So yeah, I've got extra land here, so I can play 3 lands total. So yeah, I guess there's a chance I can Escape Shift. And then every land we sacrifice is essentially 3 damage, thanks to Hearthhull and Mayhem Devil, although we do still need to take care of Gideon, or both Gideons, because they have that emblem. Yeah, I'll still give this a try. So I need to start damaging some of their planeswalkers. Probably the Wandering Emperor. Opponent tutored up a Rest in Peace, so that can shut down my graveyard going forward. So our commander, once fully stationed, does have haste, so we can use it to finish off one of the 2 Gideons. And then second main, I can still activate it, sack a land, draw, hope to hit some more land drops, so we can maybe keep it going. Escape Shift would be nice to cast here with Mayhem Devil and a fully stationed Hearthhull. And then now I can still activate it. Hope to draw some lands. Fetch lands are ideal. Damage Emperor, so they can no longer -2. Chrome Mox also could give us an extra mana, although I believe we're still 1 short of playing Analyst and sacrificing it to get lands back. But we do have the mana to Escape Shift. Can sack all my lands, even get some new Capenna fetch lands, which will also sacrifice themselves. And then, as long as we can get our opponent's life total to 0 while also dealing with Gideon, we can win right now. And yeah, I think we might be able to. Sacrifice everything. And our opponent scoops it up. Awesome. That was a win out of nowhere. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw, facing Tifa Lockhart. A green, basically landfall combo deck. So we can be prepared to die on turn 3. Our deck has very little in the way of removal, so this seems like a terrible matchup. So does this hand somehow get there? Turn 1 Mystic, maybe turn 2 Swordtooth, die on turn 3, maybe turn 4, but if we survive to untap, I mean, we can play Gideon Monster or Escape. I don't think that's gonna cut it. Take a mulligan. Yeah, I mean, this hand has a potential to strip mine lock my opponent, but probably not before they deploy Tifa. Sylvan's Crying gets strip mine, Azusa to play extra lands, Conduit to replay them out of the graveyard. Turn 1 Mystic. I'll keep a Blood Crypt, I guess. Alright, opponent's got a Mossborn Hydra instead, probably more threatening than Tifa. So yeah, it's not looking great. Can scrying for strip mine. Don't think Ancient Tomb is more helpful. So, opponent's gotta have some fetch lands left. Although maybe they don't, since they already had to play one to play the Hydra. Maybe their hand's just a bunch of protection spells. Never mind, they had another fetch land all along. So Hydra can grow to at least a 4/4. But they're gonna keep 2 mana up. Alright, Azusa is the best I can do. Strip mine a land. Could have also gone after the fetch lands just so they can't save it for next turn to pump Tifa even more. Would have been reasonable. But yeah, I assume we're dead here. If we do get to untap, we can do some cool things with Conduit. Or the Shepherd can also replay lands from Graveyard. And Gidrock Monster could help us draw a whole bunch. I guess we don't have a fetch land in circulation yet. So our opponent's probably doing the math to see if they have lethal. Blossoming Defense for starters. And do you have another fetch land? That should make it trivial. So they haven't played a land yet. But looks like they may not have one. So they're taking 10. And a halfling. So they can still make a bunch of mana with their mana elves. Ancient Tomb is a little painful here. Let's see. So if I were to play Gidrog, lets me play an extra land. But yeah, I won't be able to play a Strip Mine from the graveyard with that ability. So I would have to play Conduit first. Then I can Strip Mine 3 times if I'd like, but yeah, maybe I'm better off going for the Shepherd, so we at least get some +1 counters. And then next turn we can kind of go crazy with the Gidrog Monster. Alright, we did our best. No attacks. It is pretty funny seeing the opponent without lands in play. But yeah, any land off the top here grows a Hydra. They're gonna Snakeskin Veil first, so they must have drawn a land as well. A fetch land, in fact. So Hydra up to 10, up to 20. I guess we're not just dead, but I would lose all my creatures. So this soaks up 11, take 9, plus 5 is 14, never mind, I guess we're dead. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw, facing Pantlaza, so either dinosaurs or some sort of cascade combo. Our hand is not amazing. Mayhem Devil can be a way to deal some damage, but their dinos are likely to survive 1 or 2 damage, so then our hand doesn't do a whole lot. Alright, how about a hand with both Strip Mine and Ancient Tomb? Yeah, sign me up. Turn 1 Ancient Tomb, Signet plus Mystic. So we get 4 mana on turn 1. And then we've got Azusa with Strip Mine and a way to replay lands out of the graveyard. So it's gonna take something special from our opponent here. So if I were to play Azusa now, I have 3 lands left basically, so I can go Strip Mine, Foothills, Proving Ground. Won't quite be able to play Tireless Tracker if we want to Strip Mine them, but that seems fine. Let's go for the white mana, more likely to represent interaction. And then I can fetch a Surveil land end of turn. And next turn keep it going with a Shepherd. Opponent's got some more ramp with Mindstone. And a Paleontologist, so they do have 3 mana even without lands. And Nissa seems good. So can play Shepherd for starters. And then, is there any way I can play Nissa? Give Azusa some counters. Yes, I still have 2 land drops left. If I want to double strip mine, I'm not going to be able to play Nissa. Yeah, I guess I should just double strip mine here. Yeah, I did forget about the Paleontologist's ability here, so that could exile the strip mine from my graveyard. So I should not have bothered trying to play Nissa first and just kept the strip mine in play. Alright, that'll do it. What turn is this? Turn 1, 2, 3. Yeah, pretty good. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing the Sadistic Pilgrim. What do we think of our hand? We have a way to replay lands, a way to get lands back. No early ram besides Cultivate. This one's borderline. I think we can find something a bit more exciting. Alright, I think this counts. Vine Lasher on 1 or wait to Offspring. We have a bunch of other 3-drops, but I think I'm still in favor of waiting. And then even though I want to save fetch lands for landfall, I can fetch a Surveil land. A red-green should be fine. And Command Tower I could keep since I need double green for Titania. But maybe we can find some 2-mana ramp card. Crucible's not bad either. Still gonna wait on Vine Lasher. So I can Offspring Vine Lasher on 3 and then Chocobo on 4. With double Vine Lasher could represent a lot of damage. Oracle's pretty good too. So, start here. Can maybe expect one of them to get removed, which is why I went with the Offspring first. And a connection, so our opponent's setting up for the long game. Okay, options aplenty. Chocobo into a land seems reasonable. Could maybe play land off the top. How about a strip mine? That's a good land. And it would be a shame not to use it. Next turn either Excavator or Crucible can get it back. Now they do get to make a treasure. They're also going for a Shapeshifter. So they still have 4 mana. And how about a Grave Pact? So if their creatures die, my creatures die. So that could be a problem. Maybe a reason to go for Crucible over Excavator. So is that the best we can do? There's Nissa on top. Yes, if I play Crucible, I only have 1 land drop at the moment. But I could make it Strip Mine. Or we could make it a fetch land. Fetch away Nissa. Can still play Reclaimer at the very least. Which is also good fodder for Grave Pact, potentially. Yeah, maybe that's still better. Get a bunch of landfall triggers here. And we'll wait on the Strip Mine until we can play additional lands each turn. But yeah, this is close to lethal with the Traveling Chocobo. So that's going to limit their options with the black market connections as well. Their opponent's at 6, but they can maybe gain some life back here. And next turn I could maybe play my commander, station it all the way. And that can also drain them out. Play Crafter is gonna get rid of multiple creatures here. Take 3. Alright, we get to untap. And a Fabled Passage on top isn't bad. So what's the best course of action? If I play my commander, can't quite station up to 8 right now. So then I might be better off with Oracle of Moldaya. But I could play my fetch land first, since that doesn't change anything. See Tanuk on top. Yeah, I guess our opponent's just dead here if we fetch. And get back a fetch land. And our opponent scoops it up. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw, facing Clive, so red Devotion. We've got Strip Mine, we've got Swordtooth to play extra lands, just need a way to replay lands out of the graveyard. Still gonna keep. And then I can start by maybe getting a Surveil land. So we get a bit of card selection. Opponent's gonna be ramping into Clive. Maybe they've got some discard synergies like Evora. So red-green commercial district, Surveil. And don't need a forest. A Loot can also play extra lanes. For now I'm gonna wait on Strip Mine, develop my own mana. Maybe next turn we can Strip Mine after dropping either Swordtooth or Loot. Swordtooth also good at stationing our commander. Gotta watch out for Arena, so that's probably the target for Strip Mine. And a Steamkin. Yeah, maybe that's Swordtooth first. Strip Mine your Arena. Play Proving Ground. And Count on Luck, a very nice way to increase your red devotion. Now Lotus Cobra's not bad either, so I can start there. And make some colored mana, make it easier to deploy my commander. And then I can still activate it once we station. May as well station with a Swordtooth, but we can start here. Because yeah, we wouldn't quite get to 8 yet. Sack a land, draw 2. Okay, and then I guess we'll station once again. So we found Conduit, so that can get back our Strip Mine, so can Sarel. But can our opponent maybe do some damage in the meantime? Flare of Duplication can copy a spell. Chandra does not deal damage to creatures, luckily.
Go ahead, fight me as hard as you can, because I'm real stubborn. Let's bring things
And then
up to
they've
a
got
simmer.
2 leftover mana. Maybe they'll just sack some blood tokens. Okay, so if we get to untap here with Loot, we've got 3 land drops, so I could Strip Mine my opponent several times while making mana with Lotus Cobra. Maybe Swordtooth can go after Chandra. Alright, so step 1. Station using Cobra. Play Conduit. Can get back maybe an Arid Mesa for starters. Just to trigger Cobra a bunch. Trigger my commander. Can play loot. And then it's time to strip mine, I think. Got the city's blessing, so Swordtooth can go after Chandra. And let's see, so we don't have any land drops left, but I could still cast a Carnage, which can just sacrifice all my lands. So do we just have lethal? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lands sacrificed. That's 12 damage, plus 11. Yeah, that's just lethal here. Alright. Hope I didn't miscount. So no need to finish off their Planeswalker when we can just win the game. So could have strip mine locked, but I guess we'll just take the quick win instead. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing loot, the key to everything. Our hand has some nice acceleration with Utopia Sprawl and Chromox, although probably want to keep the Explorer in hand. So I'm gonna keep. Turn 1 just play Utopia Sprawl, and then turn 2 we'll see if we draw something we can pitch to the Chromox. Turn 1 Halfling for the opponents, and found our own loot, which I could just cast, to be fair, which is maybe a better use than going for Chromox, because we'll have a fetch land to replay out of the graveyards with the Explorer. So that's a pretty good combo. So now we both have a loot in play. And can go for Explorer. Could have maybe sequenced my lands a little differently, so I could mill one more card with Landfall. But that's alright. So get back Theater. And then now with Fabled Passage I can still play the Signet, which I probably should have played to begin with. Okay, so next turn I can deploy my commander, or maybe activate Loot, which is a decent mana sink. Pretty far ahead on lands, as our opponent plays an Oracle of the Alpha. Can be a good source of cheap artifacts if they find the various Moxen or Black Lotus. Okay, so play my commander, step 1. Can station with the Explorer, so now we can activate to sack a land, draw 2, and then Fabled Passage. Can maybe help activate Loot now. Can play another fetch land first. Or I could play it afterwards, because, yeah, we might find a landfall creature with Loot's ability. And how about Lumra? Get all those lands back. That's a lot of mana. Gonna mill a bunch more. Now I can fully station my commander as well. And then next turn with the fetch lanes, we'll start dealing damage. Don't need to draw more lanes. And I guess I still have a land drop left, because why not? Could have maybe played it untapped to activate my commander, but I'm also happy to attack for 6. I guess I could have done both, since it has vigilance. Alright. But yeah, if we get to untap here, there's multiple fetch lands in play. Those all represent 2 damage. And then we can bring them back out of the graveyard to do it all over again. Although I'm probably running out of basics to fetch. And Bounty of the Deep finds a couple spells. Opponent's got their own Chromox. Pitching a Sunbird's Invocation. Okay, so I guess we'll start by fetching. Still have a few forests left. Can also get non-basics with Marsh Flats and my other fetch lanes. Pitiless Carnage would have been an easy way to end it, by sacking all my lands in play. So you should still have 1 forest. And get some of my non-basics. Can maybe activate loot before we keep milling in case we find more landfall cards. Azusa for extra lane drops. And yeah, opponent has seen enough, they're pretty dead on board here. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a hand that can fetch up Strip Mine, replay it out of the graveyard, play extra lanes with Druid class. Is that going to be good enough against Kotis the Fangkeeper? Maybe. It's going to take a second to set up. For now, just get a forest. Now I probably want to make it my goal to get Explorer down as soon as possible, so I'm not gonna immediately get Strip Mine, I don't think. Can go for Druid class, next turn level up. Still gonna take a second here, but... Reclaimer's also gonna grow next turn with 2 more fetch lanes hitting the graveyard. And our opponent's got a Blade of the Oni. Alright, so can get a mountain. I'll level up Druid class. And then Theater. I guess Theater doesn't get forest, so maybe could have gotten a different land with the fetch land. So we can play Explorer before playing any other lanes out. But Scalding Tarn can always get a Stomping Ground, for instance. Now a Hollow Merc Siege, a way to maybe power up their commander as well. Alright, drew the Stomping Ground. So this turn, is there any way I can play Explorer and already start Strip Mining? I guess I can play Excavator as well. So let's say I activate Reclaimer. Get Strip Mine. Does enter tapped, I guess, is the drawback here. So yeah, I'm not going to be strip mining right now. So then I may as well go for Explorer. And get back an untapped fetch lands. And get strip mine. So our opponent does get a chance to cast their commander, but they may not get a chance to cast much else. And then I still have an extra land left, can make it Argoth. Our opponent's gonna terrace under the Explorer. So now I'm only gonna have one extra land drop left, but we can prevent the opponent from casting Kotis. So that's still a big deal. I got the Excavator. Alright, so we got to see this Junt landfall deck in action, and we actually got to pull off the win with our commander a few times, so I'm pretty happy about that. But most of the games just ended with strip mine, destroying all of the opponent's lanes, which is maybe not quite the power level we want in Brawl. That's of course entirely subjective, or maybe the matchmaking should account for strip mine a little bit more than it does right now, so the strip mine players can face off against each other, and people that just want to cast spells in peace can keep doing that as well. But yeah, the matchmaking in Brawl is definitely a subject for a lot of discussion at the moment, and there's maybe something that can be done to fine-tune the matchmaking a little bit more than is happening right now. But yeah, that's going to do it for today's gameplay. I want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.